Penguin Random House Audio presents The Lymond Chronicles, Book 2, Queen's Play, by Dorothy Dunnett. Read for you by David Monteath. Part 1. The Vulgar Liar. My son, that thou mayest know when the head of a king is upon a plebeian, and the head of a plebeian upon a king. The fork is chosen. The cauldron is exempt from its boiling when the food, the fire, and the cauldron are properly arranged, but that the attendant gives notice of his putting the fork into the cauldron. That is, but so he warns, "Take care," says he, "here goes the fork into the cauldron." She wanted Crawford of Lymond. His nerves flinching from the first stir of disaster, the chief privy councillor understood his mistress at last. Regal, humourless, briskly prosaic, the Queen Dowager of Scotland had conducted the audience with her usual French competence, and was bringing it to its usual racing conclusion. She was a big woman, boxed in quilting in spite of the weather, and Tom Erskine was limp with her approaching visit to France. To the most extravagant, the most cultured, the most dissolute kingdom in Europe, the Queen Mother was shortly to sail, and her barons, her bishops, and her cavalry with her. And now it appeared she wanted one man besides. The Queen Mother was a subtle woman, and not Scots. The thick oils of statesmanship ran in Mary of Guise's veins, and she rarely handed through the door what she could throw in by the cat's hole. So she talked of safe conducts and couriers, of precedents and programmes, of gifts and people to meet and to avoid, before she added, "And I want intelligence, good intelligence of French affairs. We had better place some sort of observer." Her privy councillor had never found her foolish before. From the Duke de Guise downwards, every member of that privileged family, with its quarterings of 8 sovereign houses, its cardinals, its abbesses, and its high influential posts at the French court, might be worldly, might be charming, would almost certainly be a congenital gambler, but would never be foolish. These were the Queen Dowager's brothers and sisters. Good God, where better could she go for intimate news? Granted, it was now 12 years since, a young French widow, she had come to Scotland as King James V's bride, and 8 years since he died, leaving her with a war, a baby queen, and a parcel of rebellious nobles. True again that she would be watched, by her Scottish barons no less than by the enemies of her brothers in France. Only for a French king, however friendly, to find an informer at court would be disaster. Erskine said aloud, "Madam, you're supposed to be joining your daughter, nothing else." "Some sort of observer," she was repeating quite unruffled, "such as Crawford of Lymond." With an elegant yellow head in his mind's eye, and in his ears a tongue like sword cutler's emery, Tom Erskine said bluntly, "His name and face are known the length of France, and I'm damn sure he'll not be persuaded." Notoriously, at some time every faction in the kingdom had tried to buy Lymond's services, nor was the bidding restricted to Scotland, or to statesmen, or to men. Europe, whenever he wished, could provide him, and probably did, with either a workshop or a playground. The Queen Mother's manner remained bland. "He is possibly tired of trifling at home." "He isn't dull enough to commit himself to a contract." "But he might come to France." "Oh, God." "To entertain himself," said Tom Erskine warningly, "but for nothing else." The Queen Mother smiled, and he knew that he had misjudged her again, and that, as usual, streets and palaces and prisons beyond anyone's grasp lay under her thoughts. She said, "If he is in France for the term of my visit, I shall be satisfied. You will tell him so." Tom Erskine thought briefly that it would be pleasant to fall ill, to be unable to ride, to become deaf. "It will be a pleasure, madam," he said. 1. Silent in the boat. If there be a hand party there, and a rowing party, and a party of middle sport, the hand party is the swamping party, the middle sport party is the rowing party, and the spectators are they who are silent in the boat. On the last Thursday in September, and the 14th day out of Ireland, the wind dropped to a flat calm, forcing the galley called La Sauvie to approach Dieppe under oar. The best ships, the reliable crews, and the senior captains had just brought the Scottish Queen Dowager to France. La Sauvie, built in 1520, was only fetching some Irish guests to the French court, a common errand enough. But her captain, an able courtier, was no seaman. Her seamen, through a misplaced concession, were far from sober, and her boatswain had been taking hashish for months. Thus, 2 hours off Dieppe, the flags and streamers lay ready on deck, a little too early. The oarsmen, capping shaved heads, were resting and re-engaging oars, and the pilot, involved with banners, was far too busy to attend to the wind. Robin Stewart, balked of small talk, had found a chair in the poop beside the fat Irishman who was asleep. There were 3 of them, and it was Stewart's task as one of the Royal Guard of Scottish archers in France to bring them safely to court. For a century and a half, Scottish archers had guarded the King of France day and night, had crowned him, fought with him, buried him, and were looked on by others as well as by themselves as the elite of the men-at-arms who served the French crown. Thus, Robin Stewart was used to odd jobs. Ferrying the king's less sophisticated guests to and fro was just one of them. Ahead was a reception party on the quay, a speech, a meal at the best Dieppe inn, and a good night's rest on a bed before the ride inland to deliver his guests. Nothing difficult there, but little to earn him money or fame either. Heir to nothing but an old suit of armour and a vacant post in the guard, Robin Stewart had always been deeply interested in money and fame, and had for a long time been convinced that in a world of arms, skill and hard work would still take you to the top, however doubtful your background. It had only latterly become plain that success in the world of arms ran a poor second to success in the world of intrigue, and that while no one worked harder, a good many people seemed to be more skilful than Robin Stewart. This was palpably impossible. He applied a good analytical brain to discovering how other people managed to give this appearance of excellence. He also spent a good deal of time trying to breach the stockade between reasonably paid routine soldiery and the inner chamber of princes or of bankers, or even at a pinch of the fashionable theologians. At the same time, he could not afford to lose ground in his regular job, however irritating its calls on him. He looked round now, counting heads. At his side, the prince's secretary was still asleep, in a poisonous aura of wine, his black head bound like a pot roast by the sliding shadow pattern of the rigging. Whether from panic or habit, Taddy Boy Bala had been asleep or stupefied for 2 weeks. Further off, Peter Dooley, the prince's servant, was just visible, fitted into a recess, like something doubtful on the underside of a leaf. And beyond them was the prince himself, their master, and his third and most important charge. Phelim o' Liam Roe, Prince of Barrow, son of Milesians, descendant of Carbery Cahid, of Art the Solitary, Tochel the Legitimate, and Fergus of the Black Teeth, cousin to Macon, whose calves were as white as the snow of one night, was thin and middle-sized, with a soft, egg-shaped face thatched and cupped with blonde whiskers. And at this moment, Stewart saw, he was bent double in fruitless converse with a coal-black bow-oar from Tunis, thereby closing the main thoroughfare of the galley to seamen, oarsmen, timoneers, soldiers, warders, ensigns, lieutenants, and captain alike. The sweating Moor bearing down on 50...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?